no, sorry.
Uh,
Awesome. Well, we are super excited to have Ryan Zeng with us today. He's the Executive Director of the Association for Manufacturing Excellence, AME Seattle Consortium, which is a collaborative learning network for local companies in Seattle that are committed to performance excellence and collaborative learning. So we're really excited to have you here today, Ryan, to talk about Hoshin Kanri. So take it away. Thank you so much for being here with us.
all right. Thank you, Teresa. All right. Good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen here. You guys can see my screen okay?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, perfect. All right. Again, good morning. My name is Ryan Zhang, and let's today we're talking about Hoshin Kanri establishing organizational alignment at all levels. And quick introduction myself, and besides the AME, I'm the current AME West Region board member and president, and also as Teresa mentioned, I'm leading the AME Seattle Consortia. It's a not-for-profit organization, and I'm organizing the monthly events, focusing more on people at this moment. So people come and solve the problem, drive improvement, drive enterprise excellence. And besides the volunteer work, and I'm also doing independent consulting and coaching. All right, let's moving on to talk about Hoshin Kanri. And our today learning understand the organization's vision, mission, and value, and align the 3 to 5 year strategic breakthrough objectives, strengthen the organization's ability to execute by selecting only the vital few objectives annually, building lasting management buy-in and framework, and the last one, develop a process to measure monthly progress. All right, keep going. So first question, and obviously we all talk about the Hoshin Kanri here. Well, what does it mean? And obviously you guys are been using it, and it's a little bit unexpected to hear from me. By the way, we're using Hoshin Kanri because in a plain language, I would translate it into the strategy alignment. We'll explain that in a minute. But the original meaning of the Hoshin Kanri, the Hon means direction and Shin means leader. When we put them together, Hoshin basically means it's a campus, it's a direction where we're going, where to point it to, right? When we putting Canary together is a control and is a logic. When we put them together, it basically just means the strategy alignment. So it's first thing I want to clarify, Ocean Canary or strategy alignment is a strategy execution, not a strategy development. In other words, and how do we execute our strategy? How do we execute our vision, our mission from the top leader all the way down to the frontline employee. And even if then I pick and choose to say, can we start in somewhere in the middle? Yeah, absolutely. You can do that too. So fundamentally, the strategy alignment is a system approach for ensuring that organization's strategic goals and drive progress and action at every level within that organization, and also strive to get every employee pulling in the same direction at the same time. Is achieved by aligning the goals of the organization, the strategy, the higher level, with the plans of middle management, the tactics, and the work performed by all employee and the operation on a day-to-day, even hour-by-hour basis. All right, so moving on. And first we talk about the why on strategy alignment. So primarily, as I mentioned, I'm here the strategy alignment or Hoshin carrying to solve the strategy execution. If you look at a vision from on the far left all the way to the execution to the far right, you probably notice that it's more like a funnel all the way going narrow and narrow. It's primarily is not about the company organization does not have a strong vision or mission or even strategy. It's all because of strategy coming to the execution got to interpret different way. When it got to interpret different way, then we cause a huge misalignment. So the next slide will show you here different function, the contracts, operations, sales, and shipping, engineering. It's not necessarily they're conflicting each other. It's they don't get to measure each other. They're not aligned on the verbiage, on the behavior, or even the thought process. So here's the, as I mentioned one more time here, strategy alignment is to solve the execution of the strategy or vision is intended to achieve the focus, alignment, and quick response of the organization, regardless of strategy or the project or even your mission statement. All right, so moving on to the how. So here talk about how on a strategy alignment, the seven-step process here, define the true north, develop the business fundamentals, develop the department functional priorities, and here we have the cashboard process in place. Number four, deploy the plan. Here the lean manufacturing strategy will come into play. Number five, monitor the plan monthly, annually. As I mentioned earlier, it could also be weekly, daily, or even hourly. And number six, solve the problem and improve the system, all coming back, reflection coming back all over again, and the PDCA process. So before we start, and let's start the first step, define the true north here. So basically, the true north is an organizational, strategic, and a philosophical vision of purpose. What it means is, and it gives us a direction. Everything, every function, every people, every process needs to be aligned with its true north. So it's here to how to execute. The definition, true north is a contract or bond that may include the hard business goals, such as revenue and profits, as well as a broad brush visionary objective that appeal to the heart. So we may have the hard goals and the soft goals as well coming together at the true north. Express business need that must be achieved and exerts a magnetic pull. Everything has to flow or branch and be connected to everything else, as well as align with the true north. So give a quick example, what does I mean? So here I use an example of the PMI Puget Sound chapter. I'm the current president with the Puget Sound PMI as well. And obviously, this is a not-for-profit organization. All we're trying to do is to deliver value and benefit to our members. So what our purpose is build an engaging project community and advance project management professions. And our broad brush goals here, we focus more on three things here: the community, the professional development, and the career development. So here we want to talk about our goal or our direction, regardless, and everyone we talk to is we want to build a community of project managers. We want to develop the professional developments, the learnings and webinars, certifications, and etc. The last one, we want to have our members or whoever get into the community would have a great career and development or advancement, right? So how do we measure that? At this moment, and we targeted several measurements here, and membership growth, 3,200 members, membership engagement, 50%, member events, want to have 10 events a year, professional development, and 90% certification pass rate here. I only showed an example. Obviously, each organizations and agencies you get may have a different an objective here. All we're trying to show here is this become the true north that we want to work on. So I have a management team and VP of board of directors. They have a total of seven, I think seven of them total at this moment. And all we want to do is, and the VP would come propose, here's what I want to do for this event. My first question would be, is this aligned with our true north here? In other words, I already develop our community, I already develop our members, I already have a career advance for our members as well, right? So if it's aligned with minimal one, then okay, then the first directional wise, and we're good to go. And now we'll start talking about the targets. And if we do these events, are we engaging our members? Are we getting more events? Are we improve the professional development, the certification rate, pass rate? Or fundamentally, are we growing our member, right? So even if here the growing member is a result, not a process, and but we want to measure that. Are we do we have intended benefits to grow our member? If it's yes, yes, that the event or the project, the member, any member or the leadership team proposed would be a yes. All right, moving on to the second one. As a second layer here, so once we have the true north defined, that's a direction when you start the development to the next level, which here the over alignment would be very critical. So the second level here, the branching planning execution tree must be connected, aligned with the true north. So here, when you notice as use the word must here, this is non-negotiable, and we have to align with the true north. However, some member would say, are we doing some other events and can we, it's not directly contribute to the member growth, can we still do it? And obviously the answer was still coming back to the three brush go we're talking about. Are we improve our community? Are we professional development our members? Do we have a career related advanced benefit to our member, right? If it's these three, and most of the cases, it will contribute to the community. We still, even if there's no direct result to group members, but we're building our awareness to our member. One example, we have the mentorship program with the high school students. It technically does not drive the membership growth because high school they cannot be the member. So but we still support the mentors with the high school students for the past 10 years. It's strongly to get the members coming in, build a community, have the connection and ties with the community, and our member feel better. So that's a strong, even if it does not contribute to the membership growth, but at the same time, we're building a community, get a member to feel more belongings and they feel their contribution. So coming back to our business fundamental here, the second layer, it has to um, connect it directly and with the true north. A couple of examples here. If it continues to use our community professional development and career development, right? If we deploy our target here, the four major branch I'm talking about here would become the membership growth, member engagement, member events, and professional development. So, and a quick trick here I did not mention is I would only ask for 3 to 5. In other words, if we get too many, then we'll get distracted with a smaller goal, right? And so from my perspective, and we only want to focus on the 3 to 5 we can execute with the resources, the bandwidth we have in this year. So here, coming back execution again, a lot of things we want to do, but do we have the resources? Do we have the people? Do we have the volunteer, right? We are volunteer driven. Do we have the volunteer to execute the events? If the answer is yes, I want to focus on a few vital things we can do. If I keep dive deep here with each level here, this in this area, you guys be very familiar with as more of the KPIs or metrics in here for each level. Member net increase, new members, and member renewal, member non-renew, under membership growth. Member engagement, there will be volunteer engagement, events attendance, member events, networking, career, professional development, and the professional development that will be related to the programs and certification and etc. So all the metrics here down below is to support the bowler or the set vital few I mentioned, and always to support the direction, the true north. And I'll talk about the community, professional development, career development here. All right, I will take a pause. And Teresa, do you have any questions at this moment?
Actually, she had to step away, but I am keeping an eye on the chat and we do not have any
Okay.
questions yet.
Okay, all right. So I'll explain a little bit more here because obviously the Hoshin Kanri or strategy alignment is an overarching strategy execution. So if any question, please feel free to type in the chat or just unmute and speak up. All right, keep going. So the next one, and we're talking about the deployment leader. So here, and we have the racing here. And the quick question that you can type in the chat here. Who is the most important person in this racing? Obviously, the picture you guys see right now, it is the longest racing boat in history. And I can't remember which year, several years ago, it's in the United States and it's racing in Pennsylvania. It's a 29-person boat, actually. If you notice there, and it's a long boat, a lot of people on there, but if you want to count it, 29. So question here, you guys take a guess. Who is the most important person here?
You have got a lot of folks all typing in the same answer, so it looks like we've got a knowledgeable crew here.
Mhm.
Coxswain is what
Yes.
everybody's saying.
Yep, that's exactly right. This person, the coxswain, is the most important person, and make sure each member is pointing at the right pace and intensity. Individual efficiency does not equal to the overall efficiency, right? So the important thing I made it here with the policy deployment, you probably noticed in the slide title here, deployment leader. That is correct, which means for every subtitle we just talk about here, we need to have a one deployed leader responsible for it, which means then it could not only means in the horizontal, but a vertical as well, not only vertical, but a horizontal as well, collaborating with others. And it's true, sometimes you don't control But as long as you're deployment leader, you fully own this, only fully own the membership growth, for example, then you're fully responsible for collaborate, get resources to align with others, volunteers and events and etc. to drive for that. So this is most important. And if you do have questions, then we can answer that as well. But at this moment, I'll keep going on. What do we need to do exactly? So the what on the strategy deployment. So here, when we start talking about the what here, and the first I would introduce an overall strategy alignment, the mental model. It's a fairly simple model. It's all based on the PDCA. But here, I want to emphasize the four-step process here. Number one is to define what is the gap. So when we define what is the gap here, is fundamentally the question become what is the problem? In other words, if I ask the question, what is the problem definition? And you guys can put in the chat as well or think about for a few seconds. And the typical response I got is the problem is an abnormal situation, is unhappened and unexpectedly, surprisingly, etc. Here, I want to define the problem really in the way of the gap between the actual situation and the target situation. In other words, is a deviation from the target is the problem in our definition here. It's very important. I'll explain in a few minutes as well. But once we define the problem in this way, then all of a sudden, the first question we would always ask is, what is the target or what is the standard? Once we have that, then the whole problem solving process become much, much easier. So you may notice in the step two here is the fishbone diagram, right? This is literally to drive into the root cause and understand what the potential root cause would be. Then we can form our hypothesis, which leads to the step three, which is to give us more what is the battlefield root cause or potentially hypothesis would be. Then we can start testing our hypothesis in number four. What is the action plan? And once we finish the action plan, they start over again back to step one. Do we still have a gap? Was step getting better, step getting worse, and what did that result would be? The whole process here, and I typically would use an A3 process to facilitate the whole Hoshin Kanri or strategy alignment. I call it strategy A3. I know normally when we talk about A3, it's related to A3 problem solving. And if we expand the scope a little bit, and problem solving A3 does involve a lot of root cause analysis and hypothesis, etc. But if we make it a high level, I turn around the A3 into the strategy A3, it become a proposal. In other words, in step one, define the gap. Step two, reflect what happened. Step three, prioritize on possible causes. Step four, develop action plan. And step five is document unsolved issue. So, okay, we'll go through this then step by step here, giving a quick overview. And first of all, when we talk about A3 and define the gaps, as I mentioned, the first question, what is a gap? What are we trying to improve here, right? So if I use an example I mentioned earlier, and our current membership base is 3,000, and I want to get to 3,200, and that's our target. The actual is 200. The actual is in 3,000. So you see here we have a gap. The target is 3,200. The actual is 3,000. The gap of 200 is the gap. So here is a problem we're trying to solve or trying to improve. Now we have a problem. What do we need to do to really improve the membership gap here to close the gap? The step two reflects what happened. So here the reflection what happened would be what is the possible cause and membership to grow? In other words, and if we do want to solve the problem to close the gap of 200 members here, what is the possible cause here? Do we need to get more member? Do we need to get more events? Do we need to build more networking events or learning events? Do we need to get more certification? Or do we need to get a more professional development and certification courses or study groups or book clubs or Toastmasters and etc. Right? Whatever it is. So what is then exactly the potential root cause? Then we need to drive our membership growth. And also you may remember that membership growth here, there are three sub bullet points. That is a new member, whoever the new community join as a new member or is a renew member who believe that we did a good job and want to participate in our events. And also the bigger portion is a non-renew member, which means that being a member for a couple of years and when it's renew season, it decided not to renew and leave the membership pool. So coming back here, so how to solve the problem. Number one, we need to say, what did we do good? And to keep the member renew, and do we do our events and study groups and in-person events and networking, or do they have a good career related advancement or development with the chapter here? And number two is a non-renew. Then now we have to dive into when the people join the chapter or when they decide to non-renew, what's their reason? Are they feel less value? They need and they want more events we have not delivered, or they want to develop more professionally, get more events we have not done that much, or they want to get more and career tips and coaching, etc. Then we have not provided that service yet. Or some other members want to come here looking for the mentor in a community, then we have not provided it yet. The last one, the community, as mentioned, and do we have some reasons that we need to build a bigger community to tie to a bigger goal? Then we have not fixed that. So coming back here would really give us a reason, what is a potential reason or hypothesis that we can test in order to go to drive the membership growth. So number three, prioritize the possible cause. And well, we get a lot of feedback, right? Every year we do the member surveys and we ask questions, we do the events, we ask feedback as well. So what is the value field we can do, we can execute based on the resources, the volunteers or and bandwidth we have, right? So based on the survey or the feedback, we had a conversation with our members here, then we sequence and Pareto them. Then the battlefield then we know would be we need more events, we need more in-person events. Number two, we need to get a more professional development opportunity. Number three is they want to have more the community belonging or related to the career. So you probably notice the battlefield here. The number one our member asking is in-person events. Obviously, probably not surprising after COVID and people stayed at home and working virtually for the past 3 or 4 years, especially during the COVID, and now COVID behind us, when we're still doing more and more virtual events, that is not our member want. So fundamentally, they're asking, hey, we want to get more in-person events. When we do in-person events, it could be the professional development events or pure networking events, just know each other, talk to people. Or last one, they could have and get additional career tips in related to that. So the last one, once we start to driving our actions and details here we'll get to a lot of details. And as mentioned, for the whole chapter I have, then I have 8 different VPs and different functions that are taking action plans. But at this moment, I encourage each VP to do more actions and to test the hypothesis. In other words, I'm taking this action here. I'm intending to solve the problem with the network events. When we do the network events, are we getting more member engaged? Do we see the attendance rate going high? Are we seeing more member coming to the process, right? So then we can test our hypothesis. Are we getting better? So as I also mentioned here, with the action plan over the things here, we can have a lot of ideas. When we have a lot of ideas, then become a tricky thing is, do we have the bandwidth to execute? Do we have the volunteer to drive? Do we have a volunteer to take a lead and execute the plan? So here we kind of selection process, and we only want to select, we ask the people the question, do you have bandwidth to lead this initiative? If you do, okay, great. Then we can give you a couple more volunteers, then please take a lead and execute, and we keep the coaching process in between, and we'll see how it goes. The last step here, and document unsolved issues. Any unsolved issues and question marks or support needs here or document here. This is the last steps here for the whole A3 we're talking about here. However, it is the most important step as well. The reason, and most of the cases, as I mentioned earlier, we got a lot of ideas, we got a lot of actions, and we want to do the project, we want to execute. But the question would be, do we have the resources to support that? If the answer is yes, it's folded into the action plan we can execute. If the answer is no, then we're documented here as an unsolved issue. It's a great idea, and I think we can do it. However, based on the resources, the volunteer, and etc., we don't have the bandwidth to do it this year. So here's the time boundary here. We do not have the resources and bandwidth to do it this year. Does not necessarily mean we don't have the resource to do it next year. The more volunteer we have, the only constraint here is resource and bandwidth, right? So if we do get more volunteer, we can do the more events, and the unresolved issue here become a solution, and we can start executing. So now I've put them together, and all five pieces together, it become A3 from left to right. The whole logic sequence is, do we have a gap? Do we have a problem? What is the rationale reflection last year? What is the hypothesis? What is the root cause? And we can potentially take an action to do this year. Here, you may also notice an action plan here. In this way here, since we're talking about a high-level strategy, the action plan here is a high-level milestone, what we want to do. The last one is it's an unresolved issue, the ideas that we do not have a bandwidth to do this year. So it's more important to select what resources we don't have to do this year versus to choose what actions or project we need to do this year. So I also want to use this slide to make it a reverse way. So I just mentioned from the start to finish, right? Here's a gap, here's a problem we want to solve, here's the rationale, here's the root cause and hypothesis you want to do, here's the sequence, here's the action we want to do, here's the unresolved issue, we don't have the resource to do it this year. If we make a reverse way, would be, okay, now we don't have to do these actions or we don't have the resource to do this. With our current available resources, we can do these actions, which is documented here. They will justify or support our rationale. We will have a lessons learned out of hypothesis and fix. We're going to close our gap. So it makes sense to you guys, okay? Um, if we make a reverse way, it would be if I use my resource to do this, I'm going to support and lessons learned from last year, I'm going to close the gap. So both going backwards and from start to finish or finish to start and left to right, left to right. And it's very important to justify the logic. And because here we're making it logic is here is a very logical way or even causal or even black and white. If we do this, are we going to receive our intended results? However, most of the cases, as you guys can imagine, it will not solve our problem, right? Our gap here is 200 here. And if we get our problem here is solve the 150 member increase, now we're coming back to say, okay, where is our hypothesis or action? Do we have our lessons learned? Then we can start over the process again. So the reason I give an example here, we have been using this process for the past 4 years, and we actually increased our membership during the COVID, the lowest point from 2,300 to at this moment, we're slightly over 3,200. So we're probably one of the few organization I'm using here to really bounce the membership base. And some of you may ask him question, oh, use an example for Puget-Sound PMI chapter, not AME. The reason we do the difference would be AME is focused more on organizational member, and I'm doing more events related to people and training and how to solve the problem versus in Puget-Sound PMI is an individual member and the data is more fluent, the data is more tangible that we can show and build a case here for you guys to see. All right, moving on. And questions at the moment? All right, if no question, we'll move on. Now we from the true north deploy to the second branch. Now we'll continue to move to the next level. Here, continue to cascade to the next level, require cross-functional collaboration, reiterate the process to lower level possible. Here's a level 3. You may notice here they have multiple functions and collaboration, and also to support the same and the same second level as well. So here is more of the collaboration going on. So at this moment, I would like to introduce a concept called a catchball process. So the catchball process here is basically means, well, like we're pitching and catching, right? Play the game, right? Going back and forth and bounce back and forth and left, right? Here in the post-deployment or Hoshin Kanri process, it basically means we're communicate that to our employee, both horizontally and vertically. What it means is it translates the vision of senior management into the concrete activities throughout the enterprise. Catchball entails a frank, reality-based discussion between and within management levels. The leader normally defines the required results, the team member the means. Catchball is a scrubbing process that help management and employee understand what's real. So use an example I mentioned earlier. I'm the chapter president, so I'm not going to tell all the management team or our volunteer what to do, but I will define, here's our chapter goal here. We need to get to 3,200 members by the end of this year, and we need to do 10 events a year. And also we need to get our member engaged level measurement in a measurable way to 50%. And also we want to get whoever got into the process as they participate professional certification, we want the pass rate to be 90% and above. So here's all I need to align. And now I need to let our employee or our VPs or volunteer know what to do with that. So here I ask a question. What do you think? What do you think we should do? And they give me an ideas. Sometimes they come back to say, hey, I don't think your goal is realistic. I don't think we can get to 3,200 members, right? Um, so I said, okay, I understand that question. Then here, then that's your feedback. And how do you think, why do you think it's not realistic? What do we need to do? And they give you the reason. From time to time, actually, I would agree. Sometimes then my group goal is getting too aggressive, become based on our resources and based on what we can do is not be able to achieve that, then I'll adjust the goal. From last year to this year, I adjust the goal from 7.8%, not 10% yet, and 5.8%. Sorry, from 10% to 7.8%. In other words, and our growth rate, we want to get from 3,000 member to 3,200 member, roughly about like 7.8%. And now we take our feedback and then we challenge the team. Can we do better? And not surprisingly, right? I mean, most of the people are asking, coming back here, now it's time for us to say we create a problem, we solve the problem. At this moment, and we're roughly 5 months into the process, we're actually getting very close to 3,200 members. So we're solving the problem, but it's a little bit secret here, obviously, in a couple of months. And I'm going to challenge the team one more time. Yeah, we did a 3,200 already. Can we do 3,400? Hey, I just raise the bar a little bit more. All right. So coming back to the catchball process here, the most important thing here is to have a collaboration and open discussion and asking question. And what do you think? Once we receive the feedback, we'll provide our feedback as well. And going back and forth is like in the catchball process, the pitching and pitching when we play the games. All right, if you keep going to deploy the plan, it will look like this, right? From the true north, you put everything together from the true north and all the way deployed to the second level, to the third level, and a collaboration come into play. We do have a deployment leader. The whole process here going up and down and follow the catchball process. Now here, we'll realize the broad objective have become a narrow, while process focused on objective are deeper down the tree. To give an example, if it could be back to our chapter here, the goal is to get to 10 events a year. Now we have to ask, okay, what do we need to do with the 10 events a year? If we go down to events, okay, we want to do 5 networking events, want to do in-person events or 3 in-person events, I want to do the professional development events. Now become details for the specific months of May or June, what do we need to do? And what events are we going to do? What's the objective? Who's going to take ownership? Who's going to do that? So at this moment, by the end of by the end of June, we'll have another in-person event at the Mopop in the museum in Seattle. We have a leader take ownership. Then we have a targeted 100 person to join. And obviously, you see all of from the high level to the detail to the execution we can do every day. And I can track progress as well. And based on what I received, and yeah, we're doing the event by the end of June. And do we have all the details and A, B, C, D, E? Then we can check one by one. That made me feel more confident. Obviously, I would not check the details myself. I always would check from the VP perspective. Then are we on track or not on track? If it's on track, and I'll ask a couple more questions. And if it's good, then we'll move on. If it's not on track, and asking, okay, what do we need to do to get us back on track, which is really gonna problem solving a PDCA process. Now it's a do. Okay, so if we're coming back to the do, we'll talk about the PDCA process as well. You may notice under the PDCA process in the do here, we have a smaller PDCA as well. So between the deploying and the checking falls into the doing, the chart is the most important work. So most of the cases, and we downplay the do. Here, I want to turn around and emphasize it is the most important and also very hard and challenging thing to do. Because things don't always come into our plan, right? We have a perfect plan for every year. Once we get execution for each quarter, each month, each week, and we sometimes even every day, then we have something happen, and either the volunteer all of a sudden and have a family emergency, they cannot do the work for like a month or two, and or one of the events come in the budget is higher than expected, or our communication to our member do not receive that and do not receive the communication. All the required PDCA process coming back to and drive the details and problem solving. So here I'm not diving into the details and problem solving, and we can continue to use this problem solving as a tool to solve the problem, as I mentioned, the details on a day-to-day basis, or even from the high-level strategy perspective. And deployment at the ladder of extraction, you guys are probably very familiar with this already. When I mentioned from the higher level, is more question on the why, and then more abstract, as I mentioned, if this year we want to do 3,200 member, right? It's very abstract. And once we start deploy or get to lower level details, volunteer leaders and etc., the question will be, okay, with this event we're going to do, can we grow 10 members or 50 members? Right. So that's more details, and the how question goes down to the ladder. So it's more like that from the higher the ladder and the higher the position, the long term the vision, the why question, the lower the ladder, it become a more concrete details, actionable, and what can we do? So obviously all the way down to the bottom is the daily problem solving, and all the way to the top is more related to long-term vision. Again, this is the PDCA process. Even somewhere in between the department level, they can have a vision as well and drive down to the problem solving. So, all right, now we talk about and we have the plan and we have the North Star deployed to the second level, third level, all the way down to the front employee. We have the action all connected together. Now it's time to monitor our plan. When we monitor the plan, we go from bottom up. In other words, we don't monitor the vision regular basis. We do monitor, but it's on a quarterly basis or semi-annual basis, right? The most frequent we can do is to do it monthly, but we don't change our overall strategy minimal level for 6 months or even sometimes once a year. So checking here on the other side is the checking on the daily, weekly, or the worst case is monthly. And primarily it's weekly or daily. So checking is the ugly duckling of management. It's hard, but you have to do that. It means comparing what should have happened with what actually happened. Checking the quality another work is a sign of respect. Here, I want to emphasize the 2 points here, especially the last 2 points here. If you guys recall, I mentioned earlier the problem solving, the gap, the problem definition. So when we're checking, we also check exactly what is the actual situation against what it should be or what is the target situation. So that way we have a baseline we can check against. If the question we're asking, okay, what is the target or what is the baseline? If the question we heard is we don't know, then now at the same point here, we don't have a problem. We have nothing to check, right? So if we frame the problem statement into what is the target versus what is the actual, now we become a problem, and then we have a problem now we can check the problem. And the last word here, checking the quality of another person's work is not micromanaging, it's not just not trust and etc. It's actually to show the sign of respect. I want to emphasize the numerous ways I mentioned earlier. I'm doing the employee engagement, motivation, and leadership culture events every month with a member with an AME Seattle, and a lot of questions coming on. But one of the most important thing, and people coming with people, and people need feedback. If we don't check, we let them go, we let them struggle, we actually don't show respect to that individual who is doing the work because they need support literally on a regular basis. If you don't check with them, do whatever they need to do, if the result is not to the expectation, all of a sudden they feel not appreciated. However, on the other side, it keep tracking and on a regular basis, it's a sign to show respect. Hey, what do you need help with? How can we help you? Do you need resources? Do you need volunteers? And how can we support from coaching to get the people really to achieve the expected results? Once we get to that point, reflecting back, that's really appreciation coming into play once we have a great events and achieve our results and solve the problem. Okay, so the next one, when we talk about checking here, I call it connected checking. You may hear the words and tiered accountability process as well, but the connected checking is really to monitor from a daily basis, weekly to monthly, quarterly, or even annually. Once we get all connected, overlapped, and the whole process become expose the problem sooner than expected, and also to show whenever support is needed, we can jump in to solve the problem. So it's like a great detective, right? And when we see the results, if it's meet the plan or standard, if it's a yes, and obviously we standardize the process and go through the standard work and we look for improvements. If it's not meet the standard, then and we'll come in to trigger the problem solving, adjust our hypothesis and solve the problem, and adjust the challenge as a mystery challenge, a great detective. Also means and standardize if everything goes according to the plan, but it's very rare. It's very rare we see the actual really versus plan. Okay, once we get to this point here, the last step, we go through the whole PDCA process and we check in with problem solving, we standardize the process. Now we improve the system. Improve the system is literally just to review the progress, document lessons learned, and start all over again. So from the strategy alignment or Hoshin Kanri perspective, I do not recommend to update the strategy too often unless it's an overall environment change or direction change and etc. Normally, it's about annual basis to have the plan, deploy the plan, but the check regularly, quarterly, or even monthly. The best organization I see so far, they're doing their strategy every 6 months. They're striving to get a 3 months, but it's roughly take 10 years already. It's still roughly around from a year to half a year. So strategy wise, and don't change the strategy too often. All right, so and here annual PDCA cycle. So the templates that I put it here is to have an annual PDCA cycle, a strategy Hoshin Kanri cycle in November, December, by the end of the fiscal year. Then we started to reflecting and what achieved this year, any lessons learned, and want to take that feedback and form into the plan for next year. Normally in the December, January timeframe, the latest, and the next year plan would be formed and start checking monthly and quarterly. And somewhere in between, typically June, July timeframe, we would have a mid-year check to really scan our environment or any additional direction change to see whether we change the plan. Over my experience so far for the past 15-ish and 20 years, it's very, very rare we do have a strategy change or direction change in the middle of year. It does happen. It doesn't happen very often. So especially it's very disruptive when you have the strategy change or something all of a sudden from one direction, our hypothesis one direction to the other, when we change. Otherwise, then we don't change our strategy during the year. All right, so if I put them together, strategy alignment and the lean production system, and the strategy deployment is more on the brain side, and is the telling the and interesting stories, apply the scientific method, the PDCA, reflects and learn. Our nerve system on the other side is align the activities, connect everything, respond quickly. So it's more on the strategy, the high level deploy. The other one would be daily management. If we put them together, they would really achieve the focus, alignment, and quick response. So the final quote I will put it here, we don't want the robots moving in lockstep. We want the human beings in all their creative, cranky, and eccentric glory, moving in the same direction, pulled by a shared vision. Thank you. I think that's the slides I have here. And I put my contact here in LinkedIn, or I also put a QR code for the Seattle Consortium. So any questions and you guys want to participate the events as I mentioned earlier, employee engagement, motivation. I'll talk about people and then we have a monthly and events. Right now, I'm getting more demand and starting to do and 2 events a month now. And also we're starting to and pitch into the product development and also the supply chain, which is a hot topic right now. All right, I think I'll open up the questions and I think I just unshare this moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan, for that
Thank you.
amazing presentation. I echo Sam in the comments, cranky and eccentric glory. We can get on board with that for
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions for Ryan? Feel free to raise your hand, come off mic, or submit in the chat. We'd love to hear from you.
No questions? Or is I did not explain it clearly.
Hi, this is Anita. I have a question, but
Yeah.
I can't find the hand raise function. I don't play in Zoom very often, so sorry. Um, so thank you again for the great presentation, Ryan. Do you ever use the X matrix to visualize what you have done with your Hoshin Kanri, and how do you find people respond to that when you use that visual?
Excellent question, Anita. And before this events here, I was chatting with Teresa and Tanya as well. I said, you probably noticed that I did not have an X matrix slides here. The reason, Anita, X matrix is a great visual tool to have one page. I see the major issue is that is the result of the Hoshin carry, not the process. So, in other words, once we have this full process follow as described here, now we have a plan. What do we need to do exactly? We can now put them together into the X matrix form to see one page as a reminder for us every day. What do we need to do? Are we on track? And etc. However, if we only focus on the X matrix, that is results. The major issue I see from most organization is it become a check the box. Yeah, I have the X matrix here, but what do we do? What is the action? What is the rationale? What is the area we want to improve this year? It become a very vague. Become a very vague, then the execution become a problem. That's the major challenge. So to answer your question, I do use it, but I don't recommend X matrix at the beginning, and especially not follow the process, have all the details ready. Now we can put them together and X matrix. That's just a 1 day work versus when we do the post deployment, that really takes some hard work to understand the details, understand the direction. As I mentioned, I will only asking for 3 to 5 objective. If it's too many, then we need to start pare down what is the most important thing we can do this year versus we want to do a lot, right? It's just not worth the effort to have an X matrix, but it's just not executing.
So are you finding yourself using an A3 to send your message up to your executives, as opposed to the X? Okay. All right.
Right. Right. So
Great.
so I want to clarify here a little bit more. I use A3 as a form because it's easier for me to understand and follow the logic. However, it's more important is the mental model I mentioned earlier. Regardless what form you are using, it does not matter that much. Several of the clients I have, they want to use the problem solving format. Can we use it? Yeah, absolutely, you can. It's just from the strategy A3 I use, because that's from a high level. I need to take the A3 to talk with the CEOs, talk with the general managers, operating director. They don't want to see the details. All they need to know is what is the problem I'm going to solve here? What is the rationale from last year? What do we need to do this year? What is the high level milestone? What is the most important thing? I will always ask questions. Okay, you think about this, and what do you don't want to do this year? So, quick answer to that: you can use any form you want. And from audience, from my perspective,
Oh no, we might have lost Ryan. Let's see if he comes on back. But great question, Anita.
Thank you.
All right, let's give Ryan just a moment. Oops, a moment. He might have just dropped out of the meeting, actually. No worries. We'll just give him a few minutes to see if he joined. There he is. Perfect. Oh, we might have lost you, Ryan, but we have you back, I think. Oh, maybe not. Oh boy. Well,
Oh, that's
definitely.
weird. I got
Oh,
disconnected.
there you are. Okay. Here you
I
are. Here you are.
apologize. I got disconnected. That's weird.
Yeah, no worries. I think before you dropped off, I had a chance to answer Anita's question. Thank you so much,
Mhm.
Anita. Paul, I saw your hand raised, and I know we were just talking about A3, so I wasn't sure if it was pertinent to the conversation. And so I pass the mic to you, and then we have some questions in the chat.
Sure, thanks. Hey, Ryan, I'm curious,
Yeah.
do you use a status A3 or some form of a regular check-in tool, like on a monthly basis with your deployment leaders to check in on the progress of their mother A3s in terms of what are you learning? Are you progressing what we said we were going to execute? What are you learning? What does that mean? Along with, did it move the rock?
Correct, correct. Well, I use A3. Thank you, Paul. And good question. I use the A3 as a simpler version. And once we go with the whole company, and there will be you probably notice there's a mother strategy, there's a high level A3, there's a level two, there's level three. But fundamentally, each month we're going to ask questions and okay, your intended results is this. And did you do the action? What is the intended results? What action can we do for next month? And also, one of several company I've been building, we call it a champion network. We basically, and not only from the top leader, but we started to deploy to their middle managers and several front employee leads and etc. So everyone have an A3 in their hands. They can talk about it every month, but all their A3 has to be connected. In other words, and everything you do, they need to connect it to something. So in other words, give an example coming back here, if we're talking about the on-time delivery or membership growth, and everyone A3, they need to solve a puzzle of that A3 under membership or under on-time delivery. Otherwise, you're taking action, you're doing something, but it literally does not move the needle. That's really coming back to the whole thing. Everything we do in a company, it has to contribute to the direction or the small piece of that. And if most of the cases, and I do emphasize with the senior leader, is then give a little patient. In other words, and when we talk about the whole strategy, we talk about the whole year, right? Which means that we don't expect result in a month or two. We may have to deliver a little bit more patience to ask a little bit more questions and dive deeper into the root cause and dive into the hypothesis and test it coming back to result. It's most impactful, to be honest, is roughly around 3 to 6 months. In other words, think about it, just hit the same problem over and over again, dig deeper and dig deeper. And all of a sudden, is one problem become collaborating with other functions and it become talking with multiple people, different levels, and all of a sudden one problem solving multiple problems and automatically.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. We do have a question in the chat.
Mhm.
Heather asks, have you ever experienced resistance in using the A3 template and or getting other teams on board with using it? And if so, what are your suggestions to develop buy-in?
So buy-in would be normally the first question I would ask, and then what is the challenge you're having? It's not necessarily because let me rephrase that way. If you talk about from the top leader perspective, we ask question, what is the problem? What is the gap? It's typically very easy to understand that. But once we start deploy to middle managers and supervisors and leads and etc., that question is become very vague. So I have to turn around asking, hey, what is your challenge every day? What is you struggling about? How can we make it easier for you to do your job easier, um, safer, faster, right? Because we're all talking about the productivities and costs and etc. How can we do that? But once we have that point here, and if the people really want to engage and do the work, then we can say, hey, since you're talking about the things here, and here's the form and template may help you process a little bit more. And by the way, it called A3. Um, so a lot of times, if we use approach like that, and even the fields are not really into the terminology, but we understand, well, once they solve their problem, then we carry that message to their supervisor, manager, or senior leader. They get their problem solved, makes their process easier. They'll keep doing more and more. especially once we go to the frontline employees and leads and etc. I do not expect the formal, like a full-blown A3. It's too complicated. It's more of the question would be, okay, what's your target here? What's your problem here? What is a quick fix you think we can do to make it better? So if we do that, and the last step, obviously, document their learning into their formal document, right? Once we do that, I call it quick problem solving, and it will support the daily problem solving. It ultimately would contribute to the Hoshin Kanri and to get them buy-in. Yeah, I wouldn't say the success rate will be super high. Roughly about, I would say at this moment, I'm about a 60, 70%, to be honest. It's still about like a 20, 30% they want to do it, but they want to fix the problem and move on, and they don't want to do any learning process per se. But once they get into the process, they see they really solve the problem, they want to do more. And especially, we can get their supervisor buy-in as well, then the supervisor can start kicking in. But it's still, we're still roughly about 20, 30 folks there and does not want to do the paper. They can solve the problem, by the way. They can solve the problem very well, but they just don't want to do the papers and follow the process structure-wise.
Yep, exactly. I think that's something we're kind of experiencing too as well. It's like it's less about, the actual like tool or the methodology, but it's more about the why behind it. How can this benefit you? Really centering around the people to help kind of develop the problem. And I love just that phrasing of the question, like what's a challenge that you're experiencing and really kind of incorporating that into the overall goal so people feel heard and seen and feel like their problem is getting addressed. Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Heather. We have another question from Sandra. Do you have any tips for encouraging leaders to engage with creating vision and developing measures?
Um, so let me put it this way. Thank you. I think it's a good question too. Um, I think the leader have a vision already. And the most of the cases, they may not be able to articulate on paper. So in that case here, I would use my continuous improvement mindset here. Just have the leader write down something and also write down the 3 to 5 most important thing they need to be successful. Rather than that, then we just use that. If we do need to get a more team engaged, and we can do the team activity to do that too. But fundamentally, it's more important to get the senior leader or the top leader's vision right down on paper, and then we can start developing. Most of the cases, they just is let me rephrase that. It's not they don't have a vision. They do. They do have a vision, mission actually very well. It's just hard to articulate into 3 to 5 objectives. I normally would ask the question as well. Give an example. One of the general manager I was asking, I said, okay, so if you have this vision, mission, 5 objective here, if we do these 5 very successfully, are you going to be successful as a general manager? If the answer is yes, obviously we know there's a yes. But at the same time, right, if the general manager is successful, the company is successful. So if we do that together, then we ask them more of a personal asking question, yes or no. If we do this, are you going to be successful? Most of the cases, the answer would be yes or maybe. If there's a maybe, then it's time to refine it. Because on the other side, I constrain less than 5. On the A3 form, you may notice you can put a maximum of 6 there. So sometimes I have a little bit leeway to put a 6, but no more than 6. Absolutely no. It's non-negotiable, no more than 6. 5 or 6 is literally I can tolerate the most. Most of the cases will be 4 because if they're financials and etc. We can put it into 2, but most of the cases no more than 5.
Awesome. Thank you. And great question, Sandra.
Yeah,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions? We have plenty of time, so feel free to come on off my mute or more questions in the chat. We're happy to field that while we have Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to type in or unmute. Hoshin Kanri, it's a hard subject, but it's not so hard once we really understand the logic and the PDCA process here. I emphasized several times on the problem definition. To be honest, most of the problem, let me see, I say most of the problem. Let me give you more details here. Roughly about 94% of the problem can be framed into this problem definition. The balance of the 5 or 6-ish is more of the open question. So in other words, what product do we need to develop? What market do we need to get into, right? So it's not a kind of right or wrong, but it's more of the open-ended question. That frame, even if we keep digging deeper, we still can frame into the same way. But the problem definition is very, very important. Literally every day I use them. If we have to say one takeaway out of this presentation today is a problem definition. If you remember that, you start seeing the word differently. Because every time you see something, you always ask the question, what is the target? What is the baseline? What is the standard? Once you understand, now obviously everything you see, everything you hear, everything you talk with the other person become an actual. Now you see you have a gap. That's even with me, when I do interview and employees or interview and when I go to the company talking with the leader, same methodology. Let's say I'm expecting the leader will get engaged. Now, when I see the engaged and the leader gave more behaviors and verbiage, I can literally start gauging, is the leader really engaged or just say in front of your face and in reality they don't engage at all, right? Something happen. It's rare, but it does happen. So it's actually very, very useful regardless of situation to use the problem definition. What is the target? What is the actual? Do we have a gap? Do we have a problem?
And I love that you talked a little bit about abstraction laddering. That's something that I actually learned for the first time last week, and just really being able to kind of hone in, on
Hmm.
that problem and be able to see kind of the why and how it connects and, a few different ways that, possibly we could kind of start to tackle it. So I love that. Um, Eden added in the chat, they're also interested in learning more about how to develop performance measures. My experience is that people struggle to identify meaningful ones that we can actually pull off. If you have any insight there, Ryan.
Good question. So most of the cases here, um, so let me rephrase that. And in the most of cases here, we want to follow the framework called a QDC and QDC and G. Q is the quality, and D is the delivery, and C obviously is cost and productivity. The last one is G is the grow, and the last one is T is the talent development. So in other words, um, literally from my experience, regardless it's a company or a nonprofit organization or government agency, it can always frame within this framework. And what is the quality? Quality is the service we want to deliver to our members. How many services we're talking about? What is the on-time delivery? What is the productivity? How many we can do per hour per day? The last one, grow. Most of the cases, we also say, do we need to grow our specific area? Do we have our hypothesis? The last one, talent development, is the most important area is to develop the people. Regarding to have a channel test for the people to work on or do additional investment for training or something, regardless what it is, it's always, always, always focus on the people side, which is the original motivation for me to do all the people webinars events with AMEs because it become absolutely important regardless what tools we're using, people is the one who using it versus if we have a super fancy tool, then you don't use it. And the Hoshin Kanri, as I mentioned, if I explain the logic, the mechanics behind that, it's actually not super difficult. But it becomes difficult is the people don't understand, don't use it. Once you use it for several times, then you're getting better and better. When I go to the company the first time, I always, as long as they're using it, it meet my goal, right? I don't expect to use it super efficiently and super effectively. No, as long as you're using it, you follow this continuous improvement spirit and asking the question. The second time is getting better. The third time is getting better. And the fourth time, fifth getting better. So it's getting better and better. If we look at all the mature company asking, how do you do your Hoshin Kanri very well? Well, because they did it 25 years and they do every year. If you practice them 3 or 4 times, right, you're starting getting better. The magic number, in my opinion, the magic number is 7. So once you start practicing one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 times, and you would get it or even master it. If you still don't get it, you did something wrong, but that's a different story, right? Most of the cases, once you get it, keep practicing it, and three or four, and specifically 4 or 5 times, and building more confidence. And seven is starting getting very, very good at it.
Ooh, yes, great, great nuggets. And I think the only thing like I would add, just thinking about the kind of framework that we use here in our agency for statewide reporting, we've been really kind of diving into results-based accountability, just really starting with, what is it that we're trying to achieve, like starting with the end and then kind of developing like the means to get to the end, and really just answering like three simple questions like how much did we do, how well did we do it, and is anyone better off? Breaking it down in simple terms. So Eden, I will drop. We have a performance measure guide for Washington state agencies that we just use to kind of help people think about, certain aspects and attributes to include in their performance measure development. Feel free to take a look at that. But happy to expand on that a little bit more. But yeah, results-based accountability has been a great just framework that has helped me wrap my brain around the
Yep,
development, what's important, and like Ryan said, if you have more than 7 or 8, it's like if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So really kind of honing into what's essential.
exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great question, Eden. Any other questions? Curious too for any, I think the majority of folks mentioned that they were beginners with Hoshin Kanri, so we're super excited that this is a topic that we could bring to y'all. But curious, if anyone has any kind of feedback or just kind of takeaways from the presentation today. Is this something that you can see yourself using in your work, in your organization, in your agency? How can you see yourself using that? We'd love to hear just your perspective on today.
Yeah, Teresa, can I add
Mhm.
one more thing
Of
here?
course.
Obviously, I know a lot of people here are beginner of Hoshin Kanri, even if I mentioned several times about the North Star, right? And North Star typically from a top leader organization, but it does not necessarily have to start there. And we all know every leader have a vision, right? I mean, if you're even if a department function or the small team, you would have a vision how to get better. So that vision translated to a few things we can execute. When I was a functional manager, I do exactly the same thing. Well, I have my vision related to my projects. I have my vision related to my department. So I always frame that into several buckets. And the framework I've been using is always quality, delivery, and cost, growth, and talent development. But you may, based on the situation, well, I don't want to do all five of them. Can I only do quality and delivery? Yeah, absolutely. You can do quality and delivery. The other things, and if it's less important, you can pick and choose and which one to use. Fundamental thing is alignment. Once the leader have the vision, then you align with your managers and director or the company, then your team member will align with yours. That is the most important thing. Because I mentioned several times, the strategy alignment here is a strategy execution. The key words here is alignment. So if we have have alignment, and it does not matter what a form you're using, or the process you're using, or what a strategy you're using. I'm only introduce one way of doing Hoshin Kanri. It does not necessarily mean this is the only way or this is the best way. I get a feedback from multiple team members as well that I'm constantly improve this process. But the core is always the mental model, is the problem definition. How do we fix fix the problem and have form the hypothesis and start over again? That's important. I see Diana have a question. G stands for growth. Oh, thank you, Teresa. You said
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, just to emphasize, and if you guys want to practice more, can I type my email address here?
Yes, please. Yes, yes. If you want to
Okay.
continue the convo with Ryan, please reach out.
Yes, yes. Feel free to reach out and we'll have several conversation to help you navigate through specific challenges you may have. It's a yeah, this is the hard subjects, and even if and I understand I talk about this numerous times, and but every time I got a lot of good questions and similar to the same question as well. So it's all good questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love the analogy that you use, kind of, talking about the North Star and talking about like what is our joint vision and goal, and then the kind of the constellations for like the steps to kind of make sure that you're still in alignment with the North Star. That was awesome. Great visual and just a great kind of reminder of just, the steps that it does take to kind of fulfill that. So
Yep,
Yeah, can
absolutely.
I jump on real quick,
yes,
Teresa?
please come on down.
Yay. Um, super quick. I just want to say, Ryan, this was amazing. I love this, jam-packed with so many different tools. I'm going back through the slides now as you're answering all these questions, and thank you for answering them with so much depth. But I just wanted to just send out this reminder to folks because I did notice with this session we had a lot of folks, jump in late. And so I just want to encourage you all to go back and look at these slides because Ryan has really provided a ton of tools within a tool, right? So it's not just Hoshin Kanri, but in all the different phases that you go through, there's layers and layers, and you're using multiple tools to complete these phases of this strategy deployment. And so, like, for example, slide 22, I really loved how you put together the alignment mental model, the strategy alignment mental model, where you show 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you're highlighting the gap is super important. Then you've got your fishbone root cause analysis. Then you move to prioritizing what the problems are, and then to your action plan. And things like that are just so helpful for me to just see very simplified versions, or not versions, but simplified visuals of, you know, I need to just see this in one shot. What is it that we're looking at? And I just like the way you broke that down in that way. So I just want to make sure that folks, and then you've got the A3, so many templates within this one presentation, and you're showing, what each section is for. So for folks who are kind of new to some of these things, dive in. It really does, like Teresa said, really helps when you simplify things. It helps you do amazing things with your work. It helps you really flesh out the details and get some good, data-driven decision making going, and to have a really good idea on how to tackle a problem and get from A to Z, but in a really nice um, structured way, an organized way. And so I'm just going through all of this, and the way you laid it out was so awesome. And I personally love when we get presentations with templates we can walk away with and duplicate them or go back and use for reference. So I just again say that to say, if you hopped on the call late or you haven't had a chance to download this presentation, download it, go back and reference it often. You will get good use out of this information because it's been laid out really nice. And yes, also, Ryan shared a QR code at the end of his presentation. I do get emails that he sends out diligently. Ryan is the man. He sends out these emails
Thank
all
you.
the time, and sometimes I can't keep up with them, but there's so many good sessions happening of, process and continuous improvement. Um, and now, are these mainly in Seattle, these events?
And if it's an in-person event, then absolutely it's here.
Okay.
And because that's a monthly tour I'm organizing at will to go see different companies. And upcoming next month, we're going to see the company called Talking Ring in Issaquah. It's going to be
Okay.
fun. We have new flavor. We're going to taste the new flavor. Have not to the market yet. But we
Nice.
go, yeah, every month we see Boeing, we see Kenworth and Costco and Starbucks and yeah, all the great companies, and we start digging to have a tour. The virtual events is basically virtual, and
Yeah.
it's everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to also call that out. He shared the QR code. It's in the slides. And so if you go and scan that, you'll be able to get on this list, right? Register to where
Mhm.
Ryan can put your email, in his database and send you out all of the listings of all of these events going on. And even though we work in government. I know there's a few private sector folks on here, but it's also really, really great to go out and get examples of process improvement, customer interaction, customer experience from other groups that aren't always just government, because there's so many transferable techniques and pro tips and things that we can bring back over here. So just also want to remind folks about that QR code and to take a chance and go look at that. All right. Thank you.
All right,
Oh,
thank you, Teresa. Actually, Port of Seattle is part of my consortia, their service as well, their agency. Yes,
amazing. We've
yeah,
definitely, well, they've actually presented at our Lean conference quite a few times, and
I
it's
see.
so cool to see, just their processes too for continuous improvement.
Yep, yep. They're
Um,
part of the consortia. They engage and attend
yeah.
events and tours all the time. Even if then they come into the manufacturing tour, they learn so much and take it back to their agency and continue to improve their process. It was very cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, definitely. I just dropped the link again. I know Talia shared this earlier, but just the link to the presentation so y'all can see that QR code, get all the good nuggets from the presentation. But thank you so much, Ryan, for being with us today and just sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. We super, super appreciate it.
Sorry, thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Talia, I was going to say, stay. I think we'll be wrapping up here pretty shortly, but yeah, curious if anybody has anything else that they'd like to share about today. We're happy to hear of any, projects that y'all are working on, any barriers that you might have currently that you'd like some ideas or somebody to bounce, things off of. Would love to see if anyone has anything to share.
I have a question. Now, I know you asked
Yeah.
earlier if folks had any good takeaways from the presentation. And you could have said this and I just might have missed it, but is there
Mhm.
anyone on the call that has had experience using
Yeah.
this Hoshin Conri tool? And maybe you had like great success or you really love the tool. I'm just curious for the small percentage that is, proficient with this tool, if you've used it a lot. And maybe they've got off the call already. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I love this. I definitely appreciate, just obviously the PDCA, iterative improvements and just the space to, test out your hypothesis. If it doesn't work, let's pivot, pivot, try something again, but fail forward. Really appreciate that. Well, we got definitely have a lot of thank yous in the chat, Ryan. I hope you have a moment to take a look and see. It definitely sounds like folks are very appreciative and see such great value in this teaching. So thank
Yeah,
you
thank you.
again. Yeah. All right. Well, Tal, I think we might be able to grant a few minutes back to everybody. What do you think?
I think so. I'm just reading. I don't know what all those initials are. I'm not sure if I can read that, but I've had an opportunity to catch ball with leadership. That's awesome. Someone's done catch ball in the audience, and I enjoyed getting to give input in future state. Wonderful. And thank you for being so generous with the info and your time. Oh, we love our community. Y'all are so wonderful. Yes, we're going to give you back time in your day. Go forth, conquer, do all the great things you do on a daily basis for the state. We appreciate you all. And until next COP.
Next COP. Speaking of, Beth Adams from Department of Social and Health Services here in Washington State is going to give us a refresher on VSM, value stream mapping. Who doesn't love a good VSM? So we'll see you next month, June 17th, same time, same bat channel.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great
Bye.
day.